It's time once again for Uncle Matt's bedtime story. Hello, everybody. It's Uncle Matt, and I'm here to read you another bedtime story. And tonight's bedtime story is a special story. It talks specifically about COVID-19 and the pandemic. And many of you know that I started reading these Uncle Matt's bedtime story around the start of COVID. Actually, it was a few days after the WHO, the World Health Organization, announced and declared the pandemic. We're getting close to 1,000 episodes, folks. It's a daily story, one story every day. So it's been a long time. So the story that I found, I thought I'd read to you tonight. It's called Our Heroes of COVID-19 by Phil Riggs and illustrated by Corey Majeau. And this story was copyright in, let me see, don't know if I can find it. Oh, yes, I can. 2020. And I think for this story, I'm just going to kind of shoot and focus on the pictures, and you'll just hear me reading. There's a lot of text in the pages, and I don't really want to hold it for that long. So I'll be off camera while you look at the pictures. All right, let's get to it. Okay, here we go. Our Heroes of COVID-19. It's a new book. Might be the first one to read it. It was a beautiful and bright summer day. A soft breeze was whispering. Squirrels chattered as birds twittered and sang in the trees. The lazy river seemed to gurgle a deep, watery welcome. Best of all, the COVID-19 shutdown was over, and the sun was smiling down upon it all. It was a perfect day for Joel and Grandpa to end their social distancing. So, with smiles on their faces and a brown paper bag filled with duck food, they started their walk to the park. "Grandpa," said Joel, "I'm so glad we can finally take our walks again." "So am I, Joel," Grandpa replied. "Even though we still have to be careful, it is truly a joy to be able to have times like this." Grandpa was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You know, Joel, it took quite a few brave people and heroes to make sure it was safe for us to go out again." Joel looked up at his grandfather. "Heroes, you mean like firefighters?" Grandpa nodded. "Yes, indeed. They often put their lives at risk responding to emergencies. But there were many other heroes, too, during the shutdown. Can you think of any?" Joel squinted one eye and crinkled his nose as he thought for a moment. "I know," he said. "Doctors and nurses." "You are absolutely right. They help very sick people every day. During the shutdown, they were at even greater risk than normal," Grandpa said. "Do you remember all the people who stood in front of their homes cheering and clapping as the healthcare workers drove by?" "Yes, Grandpa," said Joel. "I cheered for them too." "So did I, my boy. It was wonderful to see people supporting one another like that," said Grandpa. "Can you think of any other heroes, Joel?" Joel squinted one eye and crinkled his nose again as he thought. "Our neighbor, Mr. Miller, is a janitor at the hospital, and Mrs. Miller works there in an office," Joel said. "Are all people who work in hospitals heroes, Grandpa?" "Well, what do you think?" Grandpa asked. Joel said. I think they are very, very brave because they could have gotten the virus too. You're so right. They are essential workers doing jobs that have to be done, Grandpa continued. And what about police officers, ambulance drivers, and paramedics? Oh, I know this, said Joel. They're called first responders because they're the first to come help in emergencies. Grandpa smiled and squeezed his grandson's hand. You're very smart, he said. First responders are heroes every day, but especially during COVID-19. As the neighborhood drugstore came into view, Grandpa said, You know, Joel, we depend quite a lot on pharmacy workers, too. They had to keep working during the shutdown so that we could get the medicine, vitamins, and other things we need to stay healthy. Like when Mummy had to get my cough medicine, said Joel. Grandpa, what about people who work in all of the other stores? Good thinking, said Grandpa. Shops of all kinds have to serve many people every day. Those workers were very brave, too. Their work is important because so many people needed so many different things. Like milk, bread, bananas, and butter, said Joel. Then he grinned and said, and lots of toilet paper. Oh, yes, I don't think we'll ever forget that, replied Grandpa. They laughed as they walked along, remembering the great toilet paper hunt of 2020. Suddenly, they heard a loud rumble. A big blue truck appeared and turned toward the supermarket across the street. Joel watched the driver backing up and heard the loud psst of the air brakes. What about truck drivers? Asked Grandpa. Do you think they might be heroes? Joel squinted one eye and crinkled his nose again. He wasn't sure. He had not thought about that before. Grandpa said, well, think about all the things they bring us, not only groceries, but all the other things too, like shoes and clothing and phones and soap and ice cream and duck food, added Joel, shaking the little brown bag. Yes, even ice cream and duck food, said Grandpa. Most things couldn't get here without truck drivers. During the shutdown, they had to keep going, bringing it all from far away. So no ice cream without truck drivers? Asked Joel. Boy, I'm really glad we have truck drivers. So am I, said Grandpa. Speaking of ice cream, would you like one? Joel looked up to see a small store with a big ice cream sign in the window. Joel loved ice cream, especially strawberry. They went inside and a nice lady put on a pair of thin gloves, then handed them 2 yummy pink cones. They walked along enjoying their treats as cars and trucks and taxis and buses passed by. Then Joel asked Grandpa, what about bus drivers and taxi drivers? Grandpa nodded. Yes, they were very brave and worked through the shutdown too, helping people get where they needed to go. And Grandpa, do you know that some people needed help getting food? Grandpa nodded. Yes, my lad. Many folks helped by sending groceries and other important things to food banks. You know, a lot of people donate to food banks often, but during the shutdown, even more was needed, and many kind people responded. As they finished their ice cream, Grandpa said, kindness is one of the most important things in the world, Joel. I hope you always remember to be kind. Oh, I will, said Joel, nodding. And you too, Grandpa. That made Grandpa smile. As the pair arrived at the park, dozens of squawking ducks came rushing up to greet them, flapping their wings, waddling and honking all the way. Grandfather and grandson sat on a bench, feeding the noisy, friendly birds. The scent of fresh-cut grass filled the air. All around, people were walking and jogging. An elderly couple wearing masks sat together holding hands. A short distance away, children, were riding bikes and playing fetch with an excited puppy. Nearby, a busy bumblebee gathered pollen from a bright yellow flower, then happily buzzed away. Joel and Grandpa were so grateful that the COVID-19 shutdown was over and that they both let out a big sigh of contentment all at the same time. They giggled about that. After a moment, Joel said, we never, ever have any more shutdowns, Grandpa. Grandpa gave Joel a big hug. So do I, my friend, and if we all cooperate by doing things like washing our hands, often keeping a reasonable distance from people we don't know, and covering our faces if we're in a busy place, we'll have a much better chance of never being that bad again. That sounds super smart to me, said Joel happily. As Grandpa cleaned his eyeglasses, he said, COVID-19 has been very difficult for everyone. But you know what? Even in the darkest of times, there's a bright light shining in the hearts of good people. So many random acts of kindness. Do you know what I'm talking about, Joel? Yes, I think so, Grandpa, Joel said. Like the restaurant owners that made free food for people who needed it? And the flower shop owner who gave away her flowers? Yes, exactly, Grandpa said. There are many, many, many more stories of kindness just like those, Joel. Far too many to count, but each and every one mattered. Joel looked at Grandpa. I'm glad there are too many to count. Grandpa certainly couldn't disagree with that. It was getting close to dinner time, so they started toward home again. There was one thing I liked about the shutdown, though, Grandpa, said Joel. All the videos that people made, they were fun to watch while we were stuck indoors. Ah, yes, said Grandpa, and all the singers and musicians who shared songs with us on the internet. And the people who dressed up as lions and bears and other animals to make us laugh, said Joel. Do you remember that, Grandpa? Yes, I sure do. And do you remember when the Easter Bunny was declared an essential worker? Well, that's because he is, Grandpa, exclaimed Joel. And Grandpa chuckled. He certainly couldn't disagree with that either. As Joel and Grandpa walked home, hand in hand, they were both grateful for the wonderful day they had had. Joel was also glad to know that there were so many kind and brave people. Suddenly he said, Grandpa, I hope all the heroes of COVID-19 know we appreciate them. Grandpa looked at his thoughtful son. I think they do, he said. There were so many who worked hard behind the scenes, quietly doing implant jobs that... Oh, let's read that again. As Joel and Grandpa walked home hand in hand, they were both grateful for the wonderful day they had had. Joel was also glad to know that there were so many kinds of brave people. Suddenly he said, Grandpa, I hope all the heroes of COVID-19 know we appreciate them. Grandpa looked at his thoughtful grandson. I think they do, Joel, he said. There were ever so many who worked behind the scenes, quietly doing important jobs that we didn't even know about. They are still heroes to us. As they neared home, Grandpa said, I really enjoyed our chat today, Joel. Me too, Grandpa, said Joel. Then once again he squinted one eye and crinkled his nose. I can tell you something about something. Oh, I can tell you're thinking about something, said Grandpa. How do you know that? Joel wondered. But then when he said it, well, what I think is that all those brave people really aren't heroes. Really, Joel, said Grandpa, quite shocked. Why do you say that? Because I think they're superheroes, exclaimed Joel in his best superhero voice. You know what, Joel? Grandpa chuckled. That's what I think, too. Okay. This is a little matching game here. Now share your experiences with COVID-19 by drawing pictures or writing stories. Just going to read this afterward. Did you know in 2019 a new worldwide virus called COVID-19 appeared and many people were sick? To stop the virus from spreading, most businesses and schools were shut down and people had to stay at home with their families. Everyone had to practice social distancing, and many people wore masks over their noses and the mouths, whatever. Yep. It's pretty amazing. Yep. And that is when Joel and Grandpa took their lovely walk to the park. Most of us had to stay at home during the shutdown. Not everyone could do that. Many people had to continue working to keep us all safe and healthy. This is the story how Joel, Grandpa, and all of us appreciate those brave people, and to remind us that with cooperation and kindness, we can get through a different time. Wow, about that. Well, that's all the time we have for Uncle Matt's bedtime story. I hope you enjoyed that story. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.